Patience is a virtue, but sometimes NHL teams just don't have enough time to wait for their young players to break out and tear up the league the way they were supposed to. Teams get into some tight situations and are forced to make moves in an attempt to try and improve their team. Well, sometimes those moves will come back to haunt you as the player you lost hope in is now tearing up the league and thriving without you. Keeping that in mind, here are the top 6 players NHL teams gave up on too soon. Filip Forsberg. It's important to consider the context when examining the Washington Capitals' decision to trade Filip Forsberg for Martin Erat back in 2013 at the trade deadline. The Washington Capitals were struggling to do much damage in the playoffs during that portion of the Alexander Ovechkin era and badly wanted to add some talent that can help them win right now. Then general manager George McPhee was frank when discussing the trade. "You're here to win. We've been in that mode for a while. This is 6 years of us trying to win a cup," McPhee said, according to Katie Carrera of the Washington Post. "We had our rebuild phase. We sort of rebuilt things on the fly here, but we'd like to continue to make the playoffs while we're doing it." Erat appeared in just 9 regular season games for the Capitals and scored just 1 goal. Washington then lost in the first round to the New York Rangers via the soul-crushing 5-0 Game 7 loss. Erat appeared in 4 of those contests, scoring no points and accumulating 4 penalty minutes. So much for acquiring the veteran to win now. Filip Forsberg, on the other hand, has done some serious damage for the Nashville Predators, becoming their all-time leading scorer. His scoring prowess makes this one of the most lopsided trades of the modern era. It's gotta be a tough pill to swallow for the Capitals, but Forsberg has now become a staple for the Nashville Predators. Zdeno Chara. The New York Islanders gave Zdeno Chara 4 years and 231 regular season games to cash in on his potential. They eventually became infatuated with Alexei Yashin, so much so that they included the hulking blue liner in a trade that would set back the organization years, if not the decade. Chara would evolve into a dominating force with the Ottawa Senators and went on to become one of the biggest and most important free agent signings early in the salary cap era. His 14-year run with the Boston Bruins is nothing short of legendary. He anchored a Stanley Cup champion in 2011, won the Norris Trophy as the league's top defenseman in the 2008-2009 season, and appeared in a whopping 943 regular season games for the club. Meanwhile, Yashin was nothing short of a disaster on Long Island. So much so that it's something that is still discussed to this day. The general manager who made the deal, Mike Milbury, is still hated by Islanders fans and just might be one of the worst GMs in the history of the NHL. Anytime you trade away a Hall of Famer, it's not going to work out well for you. The Islanders definitely gave up a bit too soon on Chara, and it's interesting to think how different things would have worked out for both New York and Boston had the Islanders not traded Chara to the Senators. William Karlsson. This is one that stings for fans of the Blue Jackets. As the Vegas Golden Knights were gearing up for the expansion draft, Columbus didn't want to lose either Josh Anderson or Jonas Korpisalo, so they actually paid Vegas to stay away from these 2 players, sending William Karlsson, their 24th overall pick in the 2017 draft, and David Clarkson to the Golden Knights to protect their core at that time. Well, you can't win them all, but this is a brutal trade for the Jackets in hindsight. Karlsson quickly became a top 6 center for the Golden Knights, leading the team in points and goals during their inaugural season. He scored 43 times in the 2017-2018 season, which, for whatever it's worth, would have been the most productive goal-scoring season in Blue Jacket history. But during his time in Columbus, he only played a little more than 13 minutes a night, so the Blue Jackets probably wouldn't have seen that production from him. His first year in Vegas wasn't a fluke either. His 0.71 points per game since the 2019-2020 season put him in the same territory as the likes of former Hart Trophy winner Taylor Hall and other standout centers like Bo Horvat and Braden Shen. Marcus Naslund. The Pittsburgh Penguins were loaded with offensive talent at the time of the Marcus Naslund trade. It was March of 1996, and the team was led by names such as Mario Lemieux, Ron Francis, and of course Jaromir Jagr. That put them in a position to trade away the 16th overall pick from the 1991 draft. The player Pittsburgh received in that deal was Alex Stoyanov, who would skate 45 games for the franchise, only scoring 2 goals. Meanwhile, Vancouver received what was the face of their franchise in Marcus Naslund. He was there for 12 years and appeared in 884 games for the Canucks. Maybe he wouldn't have evolved into the player that we know if he stayed behind the legends like Jagr and Lemieux, but the Penguins still traded away a skater who became an icon for basically nothing. If that's not giving up too soon, I don't know what is. Now, it wasn't a big deal when it happened, and Pittsburgh obviously couldn't have known that Stoyanov would be in a car accident that would negatively affect his career. But still, this is another case where a team assesses a player so poorly and has no idea what their complete potential is. Chris Pronger. Throughout his 18-year career, Chris Pronger was known as a player who could quarterback a power play. He could make a first pass out of the zone as efficiently as any other defenseman who ever played. He was a powerful skater who could easily join the rush and seemingly had enough stamina to play all night long. The 6'6" blue liner dressed for 5 different clubs over that span, and one of which has to regret trading him to the St. Louis Blues during the 1995 off-season. The Hartford Whalers had selected Chris Pronger with the second overall pick back at the 1993 NHL entry draft, but the Whalers, who are now the Carolina Hurricanes, weren't patient with Pronger's maturity process as a player and gave up on him after just 2 seasons from 1993 through to 1995. Yes, the Whalers did receive another Hockey Hall of Famer in Brendan Shanahan, but Shanahan quickly requested a trade after landing in Hartford. Pronger went on to win a Stanley Cup and collect a Norris Trophy and a Hart Memorial Trophy in the 1999-2000 season with the St. Louis Blues. Brett Hull. For the Calgary Flames, winning the Stanley Cup was all that mattered in 1988. They were the favorites to skate away with their first championship in franchise history and wanted to add that veteran depth ahead of the playoffs. The cost for that kind of depth hasn't changed much over the years. Calgary shipped out a young Brett Hull to the St. Louis Blues for Rob Ramage and Rick Wamsley. The Flames wouldn't win the Stanley Cup that year, but they would go on to win it the next year with Ramage and Wamsley still on the roster. But Hull went on to become one of the greatest goal scorers in the history of the NHL. He played important roles on almost every team he ever skated on, winning the Stanley Cup twice. Now, one of those times his foot was in the crease while he scored the game-winning, series-clinching goal, but that doesn't take away the fact that the Calgary Flames traded away a Hall of Famer. Brett Hull stayed with the St. Louis Blues for 10 years, skating in 744 regular season games with the club, scoring 527 times, and accumulating 936 points. Regardless of which side of the debate you're on, there's no denying that Calgary moved on from Hull way too early, and he would be remembered as one of the best Flames to ever put on the jersey if they didn't trade him. Now, this was only a handful of players that fall under the category of teams getting rid of players way too soon. Some honorable mentions are Matt Sundin, Ben Bishop, Patrick Sharp, Marian Hossa, and Ryan McDonough. Can you think of anyone else that falls under this category? Let us know in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching our videos. Don't forget to leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button.